may be a lot of internal political rifts, but when it comes to the existential threats the state of Israel is facing, it is true, we are all one. And in fact, right now, the majority of the Israelis, the absolute majority of Israelis, even the ones that have previously been either taken hostage by Hamas, who have been suffering directly from the massacres of October 7th, who had to evacuate their houses in the north, even those who are purely traumatized, say, finish this war once and for all, because we can no longer live,
but the objectives,
and
but the objectives and the goalposts are constantly changing.
And the constant threat of the Iranian regime. Please?
The goalposts are constantly changing. I'll get a quick word first from Yusuf. Yusuf, you know, at the beginning of the program, I listed out several examples why the Americans can never be trusted. Perhaps Israelis believe that the Americans can be trusted, and perhaps they need the Americans right now. But having said that, it seems that there is an ulterior motive. On the one hand, there is a talk of ceasefire going on, or as President Trump says, I don't need a ceasefire right now because everything has been obliterated, everything is finished, there is nothing left. If there is nothing left, I still can't understand what is it that he wants to talk about. Yusuf, how are the Iranians really looking at the current situation? Is it a strategic deception? Is that how Tehran is really looking at this issue?
Well, of course, in Iran, there's this perception that you cannot fool me more than 2 times. And now 3 times, they say, you fooled me once, shame on you. You fooled me twice, shame on me. And now we see that back in June last year, the Israelis attacked Iran while Iran was negotiating with the United States. There have been some sticking points, but of course, Iran was waiting for the 7th round of talks to be held between Iran and the United States, mediated by Oman back then. And then recently, the same thing happened, and the United States betrayed diplomacy and attacked Iran while they were waiting for the 4th round of talks to be held. So Iran is not going to be fooled again. The Iranians are saying that the United States betrayed diplomacy.
Yusuf, then what is it that the Iranians want at this point in time? Because as I understand, the plan that has been proposed by Tehran, perhaps it's not going to be acceptable even to the Gulf countries.
Well, of course, Iran wants something which is very much clear, not just now, but in the past. Iran has time and again said that it wants to pursue nuclear activity. And in 2015 nuclear deal, back then, Iran agreed to cap its uranium enrichment to 3.67%. And it is ready to do so again. This is not a dangerous level of enrichment, 3.67%. This is not much. You need more than 90% of enrichment to get close to a nuclear bomb. But 3.67% is nothing dangerous. And the Americans keep insisting on total elimination of Iran's nuclear industry, something which Iran believes is a breach of Iran's sovereignty. And second is Iran's right to develop ballistic missiles. Iran says that it is under sanctions and it cannot actually acquire air defense systems like, for example, the Russian S-400, S-500. These types of air defense systems are not available because Iran is under arms embargo. And of course, it has to rely on its own ballistic missiles as a means of deterrence. Iran has time and again said that it is not pursuing to, of course, attack its neighbors or any other country in the world, not in its history. Iran has never done so. And it wants to develop ballistic missile capability to act as a deterrence. And right now, you can see that 2 major powers are attacking Iran, and Iran is defending using its own ballistic missiles, and of course, its drones. So if these sticking points are resolved, if the United States acknowledges Iran's right to maintain its military activity, military program, military industry, and of course, acknowledge Iran's right to develop
there is a point
nuclear activities, then an achievement, a diplomatic achievement is going to be foreseeable.
One aspect that perhaps the Iranians will have to also accept is that how long can you keep saying this, that we don't wish this nation to exist in the first place. Now, from that position, I think so there can be no talks to begin with. I'll come to that point in a short while from now. But Bursin, the fact of the matter is this, that if you really look at the trajectory that has been taken up by the Americans from the time the talks were actually happening about the nuclear program to begin with, to what really has happened in the last few days, in the last 27 days, no one can actually perhaps wrap around their head as to what exactly are the Americans looking at right now. Because some believe that there is an off-ramp that he's looking at right now. Some believe that he wants to desperately find a way to say that, hey, we have won the war. But the fact of the matter is that it is advantage Iran today.
Far from it. There is no advantage to Iran. The very fact that Iranian delegation had to fly to Islamabad for these preliminary talks about talks, they needed permission from Israel command because they're not even in control of their airspace. Now, that's just one latest example I'm throwing to you of what ground and air realities are. The question of Iran actually now, having a...
Bursin, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just giving you a small example here. Right from the beginning, when this war actually began, a list was basically put out that we have decapitated the military leadership of Iran. Let's be very clear. Those
yes.
who are here, you've studied more about Iran than many of us, but have we forgotten the fact that their entire thesis of military understanding basically stems from the fact that it is not centralized. It's a pipeline that runs through the entire country. So no matter how much you basically say we have decapitated their military leadership, there is a second rung that has already been put in place. So what you're basically looking at is a regime change which has not happened. Military leadership, you may have weakened it considerably, but the fact of the matter is that 28th day, they're still fighting on.
Yeah, so what do you expect in a month with these stunning successes that you're not talking about? And speaking of regime change, let's go back to Iranian studies, which is my field. It took a year for the Shah to leave from Jan 78, when the first riots took place, to Jan 79. Now, that's just a fact. Second point is, Iran talks about its ballistic missile arsenals, and every and any state has a right to deterrence. Nobody is denying that. But what do you do with that ballistic missile in the way you use it for funding regional proxies and creating havoc across the region? That is what's happened, and those are ground realities. The missile arsenal in Iran has not been developed with Israel in mind. Just ask Pakistan what happened when those missiles and drones were fired in January 2024 into Pakistan. These are, again, ground realities. Then you talk about nuclear caps at 3.67%. Yes, that is a literalist reading of the JCPOA of 2015, Shravan, but that is taking a very loyally approach and not looking at the bigger picture, because even the Obama administration conceded. Today is 2026, year 11 of the treaty. Had it continued, by this time, Iran would have continued enriching at a capped level with second and third generation advanced centrifuges, which they are already on, and the volume of stockpile would have increased to a point where the breakout time would have completely come to a window of 0%. That is what even Secretary Kerry as Foreign Secretary admitted when this deal was signed in July 2015, that there is nothing we can do about it. In that JCPO agreement, there was no talk about the ballistic missiles at all. And that is something which Hakan Fidan, on the eve of the war, Turkish foreign minister, mentioned that once the talks with Oman, through the Omani mediation, go through, all of us need to sit with Tehran and have a thrashing out of what about their arsenal, which is a clear and present danger to all of us in the region.
Now,
so you can have a deterrence. Let me finish, please. Yeah. You can have a deterrence. Any country is entitled to have its own arsenal for deterrence, but not for offensive measures. Why is Lebanon not a normal country today and enthralled to Hezbollah proxies? Ask the Lebanese that.
I can still understand Israelis making a point here, because they are...
But ask the Lebanese. Ask the Lebanese why they don't have a normal country
I don't understand
today.
How exactly... No, of course. The fact of the matter is that no one is basically going to ever endorse the fact that if you continue arming the proxies, particularly Hezbollah, and what we are seeing right now as far as the Houthis are concerned, that is not something that can be basically supported. But having said that, can America really dictate how a country is going to operate. Because what
But
it
the
seems,
GCC
David,
GCC
if I can bring in David right now, Burzin, I'll come back to you, but David, how long can America dictate that this is how a country is going to operate? And they've done that in Afghanistan, and we saw how it was a colossal defeat. We've seen this happening in the past in other countries, in Iraq, a colossal defeat for the Americans. The fact of the matter is that you say that you want to bring in liberal values, and this is how you want the world to see it. And that's the reason why many in America saw this as, a pragmatic approach of President Trump as far as his first term is concerned. Now, rather than calling the Iranians lunatics, I think so President Trump really needs to rethink as to how exactly the world really viewing his approach.
Well, let's understand that Donald Trump is a complete ignoramus. I've known Donald. I've spent hundreds of hours with him going back almost 40 years. He is appallingly ignorant. He is mentally ill. He has no idea what he's doing here. He doesn't understand the most simple basics of the schism in Islam between Sunni and Shia and how it affects all of this. At the moment, the Iranians are in charge of what's going on here. They are not fighting the war Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu want. They are using their economic ability to shut off the Strait of Hormuz. And unless Trump wants to follow the Powell Doctrine, which is to gather a massive army from many countries to have overwhelming force to invade Iran, the Iranians are going to continue with the regime they have, and they have lots of bench strength to draw down upon. Clearly, there's very good signals intelligence that is allowing the Israeli and U.S. governments to identify where various leaders are so they can pick them off one at a time or sometimes in groups. But the war being fought here right now is being fought on Iran's terms, and those are economic terms.
But Burzin does not agree. David, Burzin does not agree. Burzin and many like Burzin have been arguing pretty much like what President Trump's administration is facing. There's no Air Force, there is no Navy, we've obliterated them. In fact, there is no leadership that exists. The question is that if that is the premise on which they want to have the talks, I don't see they making any headway.
It's a faulty premise. It's the premise that you have to fight a war on the terms we want to fight it on. And the Iranians have been preparing for something like this for a long time, and they're doing it their way. This is asymmetrical warfare. And underlying all of this, don't lose sight of two things. This is an unconstitutional war. Only the American Congress has the power to declare war. And secondly, Donald Trump, whose approval ratings are just falling through the floor in the United States, is desperately trying to make sure that people don't focus on the Epstein files and why he is hiding evidence that he says would exonerate him, and that all indications would prove that he is a serial child rapist. That governs everything Trump does, is trying to protect himself from the Epstein files, so including this war. But right now, on the terms of this, the Iranians are in control of where this is going. And wars do not come like food you buy at the grocery store with a use-by date. The outcome of wars is always uncertain. Trump is not in control here, and I'm sorry, I've got to go teach my university class.
Right. David, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Melody, I want to come back to you, and I just want to quote what your leader of the opposition said, and there is a reason why I'm quoting. You may say that I'm excessively quoting your leader of the opposition, but this is for the first time since the war has actually begun.
I would like to hear the quote that you're mentioning. Before that, you would have to allow me to react to David.
I will.
I
will let you respond. I will certainly, Dr. Melody, I'll let you respond to both.
Then please go ahead.
He says he no longer has a way to continuing mobilizing reserves. These reservists are exhausted, worn out. The army doesn't have enough soldiers for its mission. Then he says that the warning has been given. You cannot continue to abandon Israel's security in wartime for petty politics. Now, the fact of the matter is this, and I'm sure, Dr. Melody, of course, you have the right to protect your country, and no one ever is going to support the kind of attack that Israel has seen on 7th of October. That no one is going to forget. But how long can this really continue? There has to be a middle path.
Okay, then a quick comment. For me, it is a premiere. I heard a lot about conspirationalists and conspirational theorists also from the USA. Now I know that they have a face and they have a sound. And I'm quite appalled by what I just heard in the previous intervention. Let us put that aside and remember that we are talking right now about the United States of America, which right now, together in close cooperation with Israel, are the only free Western powers taking on what is not just a threat for the existence of the State of Israel. It is not just a threat for the region. It is a threat to the entire world, just as much the ballistic rockets of the Iran. And we learned that at the latest. The intelligence knew it before, of course, last week with Diego Garcia's. Ballistic rockets today can reach New Delhi. They can today reach Berlin, Paris, and the Iranian regime have previously often threatened not only Israel, not only the big devil America, but also European states if they do not abide by their nuclear bribery. So putting that aside, I go back to answering your question about Yair Lapid's comments, and I will not bore your audience, your precious audience, with internal Israeli politics. But that quote refers to something else. It refers to an internal debate between Orthodox serving in the IDF or not serving in the IDF. It's a rift about the internal equality, because the secular Israelis are the ones stemming the burden when it comes to serving in the IDF.
So you think there is overwhelming support?
From various sources, right now, there have been over 3 weeks of incredible operational military successes. A large amount, probably over 70% of the missile launches of the regime have been destroyed. The entire terrorist infrastructure has been massively degraded. A large part of the missile stockpile, the scientific, the nuclear infrastructure, all of that, all those components of the terrorist regime that have been posing a threat to the entire world order, all that has been degraded. And the question of how long this will last or how long this war can be fought is not a political question of can Israel afford that or not. It's an existential question of there is no choice. If we want to live, if we want to live, let me just finish that sentence. If we want to live in security, in prosperity in this region, it will not be possible to do that with a fundamentalist Iranian Shia regime. And you know what? More than anything, the Iranian people deserve better than that.
Exactly.
They deserve more
let
than
the people of Iran,
the tens of thousands
let the people of Iran,
by the revolutionary
I
guards
understand,
and the siege.
Melody, I understand when you say that there is an existential threat, and rightfully so. But the fact of the matter is this also, as we're getting these live images coming in from Beirut, I want a quick question. I want to take this quick question to Yusuf. Yusuf, you've heard what Melody from Tel Aviv had to say a short while back. Burzine also made this entire point. But when it comes to the Iranians, many were saying that there is a repressive regime that exists in Iran, and there's going to be a popular uprising, and that's what even Benjamin Netanyahu was counting on, that there's going to be a popular uprising because people were fed up with the Islamic revolution that had taken place, and the fact of the matter is that they've been ruling with an iron fist for this long. So it could have been far more easier, as what most Western commentators, Western experts have been saying. You are in Tehran. You are seeing what's really happening. Some of the images that we have got into our newsroom shows that there is a considerable support for the regime.
Well, exactly. We cannot ignore the fact that the Iranian government is suffering from some economic mismanagement, and it is not acting very well with regards to the country's economy. And people are really concerned about how the Iranian government, the December protests, December last year, which continued until mid-January this year. So the drive was economic grievances, but of course, Iran believes that there have been some elements that try to instigate chaos and try to derail the protests from peaceful, economic-driven protests to anti-government gatherings and protests, and we all heard about the consequences and thousands of people who lost their lives in those protests and clashes with security forces. But speaking about now, there doesn't seem to be any indication of people going on the streets to try to topple the government. We have seen only some pro-government ralliers, supporters of the Islamic Republic, taking to the streets, staying on the streets even until 3 a.m. Local time.
So, that's the other. That's the perspective. That's the perspective that it seems to be missing from the entire narrative that has been spoken about. Thank you very much, Yusuf, David, and Melody and Burzine for joining us on the debate. What we are essentially focusing on is what perhaps is going to be the strategy for the Americans. Ceasefire claims on one side, war planning on the other. As the Strait of Hormuz remains a live battlefield, both Washington and Tehran are now openly preparing for the next phase. The Pentagon, in fact, has drawn up a 3-phased plan to reopen the choke point. Even as Iran signals relentless retaliation, here's a report on how this conflict could escalate further and what both sides are essentially preparing for the mobilization of U.S. troops to laying of mines near the Strait of Hormuz by Iran.
Iran war turning into a full-scale strategic chessboard. The United States now has a clear 3-phase potential plan. The goal to break Iran's hold over the Strait of Hormuz. Phase 1. Hunt down Iranian military assets, targeting missile sites, drone bases, and naval infrastructure. This has already begun. Phase 2. Sweep the strait for mines. A crucial step as Iran is believed to have deployed dozens with thousands more in reserve. Phase 3. US Navy escorts tankers through the strait, reopening the world's most critical oil route. But this will not be a clean operation as Iran's playbook is designed for maximum disruption. Iran is mobilizing 1 million fighters to counter what it describes as a suicidal US ground war on Iranian soil. From above, missiles and drones are ready to military ships. While at sea, swarms of fast attack speedboats loaded with explosives can overwhelm even advanced defenses. And below, a deadly minefield turning the strait into a floating trap. As this battle plan unfolds, the US is rushing in forces. Over 7,000 US troops ready for rapid insertion into a war zone. It seems Strait of Hormuz could decide the course of a global conflict ahead.
All the way, President Trump has been talking about a military pause, but what we see on the ground is completely different. Tom Cooper, independent military expert, joining us. Colonel Glenn Grant is joining us from Riga. Major Defferman, former IDF major, is joining us from Tel Aviv. I want to begin by asking you, Tom Cooper, what do you really make of the developments that have taken place in the last 24 hours? A quick recap, as we just put out a short while back, you have US Navy giants, USS Tripoli as well as Boxer en route. Then you have the 82nd Airborne Division being deployed, effectively having about 7,000 troops. Where is it really headed?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Nice to be with you. As for where is this heading right now, nowhere. De facto, the US president has paused the entire situation, issued another ultimatum on Iran in respects of Iran to be forthcoming and to making some sort of a counter-offer, which might be acceptable or not. We are going to see. And unless it is so far, for the next 10 days, we are going to see a continuous war of attrition, with Iran sporadically, but nevertheless firing single or more ballistic missiles at Israel, even more so targeting US facilities and allied facilities in the Persian Gulf, in the countries of the Persian Gulf, from Kuwait via Bahrain, Qatar, down to United Arab Emirates. We are going to see also Iranian strikes on US facilities in Jordan. And in turn, we are going to see even more of US and Israeli strikes on, well, meanwhile, even music academies and single guards posts of the Basiji and IRGC around Iran, particularly on police stations in western Iran. Also several such US strikes on police stations in eastern Iran. You're going to see sporadic strikes, but highly ineffective by Israelis in particular, but also by the Americans on some of those 27 so-called missile cities in Iran. These are massive underground facilities constructed intentionally under the reach of US bunker busters, or at least the majority of US-made bunker busters as deployed by Israel and as deployed by the United States.
Right.
And while this is going on, the US ground troops are going to be preparing for their part of the task.
Colonel Grant, if I can also bring you in right now, because what we see is an indication coming in from President Trump time and again when it comes to Karg Island. For almost 38 years now, President Trump has been talking about Karg Island. His interview back in the 80s, where he's essentially spoken about, why getting the Karg Island becomes extremely crucial. Now, I want to ask you, Colonel Grant, with all the military developments that are taking place, do you believe that boots on ground is exactly what America is basically looking at right now? Because that perhaps is the only way they can actually go back to their own audience back home, telling that, look here, we have won the war. Because right now, it is clear advantage Iran.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, back home in US, they're already saying they've won the war. So they don't need to, even Trump's acolytes are saying we've won the war. All we're doing now is getting ready to open the strait. Boots on the ground in Karg Island is interesting. I mean, the first thing is if Trump actually has any intentions for, let's say, stealing Iranian oil, then he does need Karg Island. But you have to remember that the majority of Karg Island is storage. It's not actually oil pumping. So he could go onto Karg Island and then the Iranians could then just stop pumping into Karg Island, leaving lots of troops there doing nothing. But
so
from
why
what
is
is
there
being
so much of interest? If that's the case, now that's a very interesting point that you make, Colonel Grant. Then why exactly is there so much of interest in Karg Island? And because from the kind of military deployment that has been done, it all points towards one thing. Because how else do you really open up the strait?
Yeah, I think that is another thing. You open up or you dominate the strait from Karg Island. They think. But of course, Iranians have got the capability to bypass Karg Island and still make the straits untenable, either by drones or by missiles. So I think that America is sliding itself into something that is somewhere where they shouldn't be going. Let's just say that. But it looks as though they are.
Okay. Major Defferman, I want to bring you in right now with regards to what the UAE has been talking about. The UAE says that a UAE-led Hormuz security force, many would say it's an admission of failure, because what has essentially happened is that this force does not even exist. It has never materialized. 22 countries issued, a joint statement. Not a single one has basically announced specific contributions, ship deployments, operational timelines. So let's be very clear that when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, you cannot bypass the Iranians right now. You need to get them on board.
Well, that might be true in the short term, but I think what is really clear is that the Gulf era of the GCC strategy of essentially trying to placate and stay on the good side of the Iranian regime has failed. And they do need to, they're getting hammered night and day in a war that they didn't ask for, they didn't start, they didn't even partake in. And their entire strategy for the decades has been to try to buy off, to make nice, to be a hub for business for the regime, and to not be involved in any of these hostilities, and it's clearly not working. So they are going to have to step up time and again. I know they are very considered. They're worried about the Iranians escalating even further against their energy facilities, their water facilities, etc. So far, the straits are not completely closed off by the Iranian regime. They can do a lot more to close it off. Things are going through as we speak, and they're going to have to be a lot more proactive, either in bringing an end to this war, and then how do they, now realizing that this is a serious existential threat to them, not just to Israel, not just eventually to the United States or to Europe, how do they take a much more active role in weakening this regime, in degrading its capacity to shut down the straits and to threaten their own countries and their economies and their livelihoods? And one day, even, how do they play some kind of role in even bringing down this regime that's now threatened them and attacked them unprovoked for the last 3 weeks?
Tom, I want to bring you in with regards to how exactly is the GCC really prepared in this particular case? Because despite the kind of hit that they have taken, particularly Saudi Arabia and of course UAE, why is it that they have been reluctant in getting into the war? Because that is exactly what is frustrating the Americans. That is what is exactly frustrating the Israelis right now. Is it because they believe that if at all they do so, if they go whole hog, then the repercussions of it is going to remain for a very long period?
Well, that is one of the points about all of this. The Americans and Israelis, and Israel in particular, want the GCC countries to enter this war on their side, while they have started this war without informing them that there is going to be a war. Firstly. Secondly, the GCC countries have now seen, even if they are protected additionally by, less so by the Americans, but by different European allies. For example, there are Royal Air Force Eurofighters deployed in United Arab Emirates. There are Italian Eurofighters deployed in Kuwait. There is a Greek Patriot battery in Saudi Arabia, and so on and so on. So they are reinforced by Europeans. And even this is not enough for them to defend themselves. They are not really attacked. Iran is not attacking their own military facilities, but actually US military bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in United Arab Emirates. And it was only once, whether it was United Arab Emirates or Israel, Israel has targeted oil facilities in Iran, and then United Arab Emirates have targeted a desalination plant on Qashm, that Iran started targeting such facilities as well. So, as a retaliation. And this was obviously stated in this regard. So what they have to expect, should they, I mean, I have to talk as devil's advocate, obviously, here. What they have to expect from their point of view, and this is what is making them reluctant, is that in the case that Iran starts targeting their military facilities, then these are going to be hit as hard as US military facilities have been hit the last 3 weeks. And we have seen, for example, Iran successfully destroying all the major radar stations of the US armed forces in the Middle East, from Jordan via Iraq down to Kuwait in particular, in United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, everywhere. So the United States have then brought in new radars from, for example, South Korea, and this was knocked out as well. So the Arabs in the GCC countries see what is going on around them, know what is going on around them, how hard have American facilities been hit, then therefore they know if they now join the US-Israeli coalition, then they have to expect the same to happen to their own bases. And this is making them reluctant as well. And finally, there is this, they still would have to explain to their own public that they are joining what is, by majority, as far as I can gauge it, of course one can never say, but at least lots of voices from the Arab world, this is a Zionist invasion of Iran. This is an attack on a Muslim country, whether this is Shia Muslim country or Sunni, it doesn't matter in that regards. And therefore, people are not particularly enthusiastic about their regimes now joining the fray and fighting on the US and Israeli side.
Colonel, if I can, make an estimate of what Americans have really achieved so far. Because within their audience, as you pointed out, that they already believe that they won the war. But let's be real here. We're looking at a region that has been completely destabilized. The objective that they initially spoke about, a regime change, did not happen. They may have been able to militarily destabilize them to a certain extent, but when it comes to their nuclear enrichment, that still remains intact. So where does it really perhaps put the Americans right now, and perhaps in the days to come, months to come, years to come, because it seems that you have only wounded Iranians, and that is going to cost you a lot.
Yes, that final point is, it's already cost a lot. I mean, we are actually talking about untold billions spent already for what would appear on the surface to be very little gain, because many of the things that Iran has lost, you could say she doesn't actually need as vital. The vital thing is obviously, any nuclear facilities that are underground, and her missiles and drones, and those seem to be still in quite a strong condition. So, I mean, it's really hard to see what America intends to do. I mean, if they're not careful, they're going to drag themselves into a war that just goes on and on and on and on. And I don't see that Trump has got any cards to play to reduce this. So this, lots of people have said this is the start of World War III, but you could actually say in many ways we're in it already. I would just add that, of course, one other thing is that people haven't actually picked up on as much, is that this is benefiting Russia. In the first place, Russia is actually helping Iran with targeting and with parts for things. And in the second place, they're getting a lot more money, which is actually going to put pressure on Ukraine, because Russia was struggling before, and it's not going to be struggling quite as much now. Cash is coming in.
Okay. Major Defferman, one final question I want to ask you, because there are some reports that are basically emerging, particularly with regards to the lack of interceptors, because it's a clear asymmetric war, and which has been mastered by the Iranians. And what is very surprising is how the Americans have not really, delved into it, because worldwide it has been known how, as far as asymmetric warfare is concerned, the Iranians have mastered it. There are papers that have been written about it. American soldiers have, read it. But the reality is this, that you are basically fighting a war which is asymmetric in nature, and the Iranians have mastered that. How do the Israelis really take this forward, keeping in mind that you're now facing massive shortages?
It's an asymmetric war. I'm not sure what it means that the Iranians have mastered it. Almost from the first day of this war, Israel and the United States have achieved complete aerial dominance over the entire country of Iran. The entire leadership has been taken out. Major missile launching, storage, and production facilities have been taken out. Regime targets in command and control and electronics have been taken out. The most of the Iranian Navy has been taken out. Its Air Force has been taken out. So I'm not really sure what it means that Iran is winning this asymmetric war. The fact that Iran is able to launch missiles still at Israel and drones and missiles at the Gulf states, yes, it's true. It's a nuisance. We have to head down to the bomb shelters multiple times a day. But Israel is certainly close to achieving its goals. If the goal at the outset was to topple this regime, then you can say that the Iranians have managed to hang on for the time being.
Right.
But the goal, that's not a realistic one. And so what seems to be the goal, and what the Israelis have kind of backtracked, and the Americans
not very sure.
are backtracking as well, it's just cutting down their ability to threaten Israel, to threaten American allies, American bases in the region. And as far as that goes, those goals
this is the conversation for another day, Major, because I'm running out of time, because what many of us cannot still understand is that what are the objectives that have been really met with, because President Trump says something, Benjamin Netanyahu says something, and the reality is something completely different. So that's a different, conversation altogether. That's all that we could pack in the first debate. The other big debate coming up at 9 p.m. Has Trump really lost the plot? On the one hand, he says that Iranians are begging for a deal. On the other, what we see a massive military deployment that's taking place in the face of shortages of interceptors. That's the debate coming up with my colleagues Niranjan and Abhishek.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.
Powered by Century Ply Club Prime. रहो बेफिक्र.
जब अपना कोई मूव किसी को मूव करता है ना यार, फील आ जाती है. भाई तू अपना है, तेरा सफर मुझे भी करना है. तूने प्रूव कर दिखाया यार, anybody can dream. मुझे लगा मैं नहीं, पूरा का पूरा मूवमेंट चल रहा है. Breathable fabrics, awesome comfort, effortless style, AD from the house of Arvind.
Amity has been ranked among the top universities globally for producing the most employable graduates by the Times Higher Education UK. Yet another testimony to Amity's excellent placement record.
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार.
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा हार्डकोर मसाला.
अरे टेंशन किस बात की? सेंचुरी प्रोवुड का प्रीमियम प्लस है ना. लो एमिशन है, हाई डेंसिटी है, वाटर रेजिस्टेंट भी, टर्माइट एंड बोरो रेजिस्टेंट भी है. यानी ये है जहां नो टेंशन वहां.
प्रीमियम प्लस बाय सेंचुरी प्रोवुड.
Powered by Century Ply Club Prime. रहो बेफिक्र.
हेलो लेडीज, आपके लिए है ये कंफर्टेबल सोफा, गर्मा गर्म चाय और वाईफाई. आराम फरमाइए, क्योंकि हमारा लेटेस्ट लिनन फैब्रिक कलेक्शन है ही ऐसा. वो क्या है ना, इन्हें देखने में और दिखाने में थोड़ा वक्त लगेगा. बंदों को लिनन पसंद है तो पसंद है. लिनन बाय अरविंद.
Amity has been ranked among the top universities globally for producing the most employable graduates by the Times Higher Education UK. Yet another testimony to Amity's excellent placement record.
अरे टेंशन किस बात की? सेंचुरी प्रोवुड का प्रीमियम प्लस है ना. लो एमिशन है, हाई डेंसिटी है, वाटर रेजिस्टेंट भी, टर्माइट एंड बोरो रेजिस्टेंट भी है. यानी ये है जहां नो टेंशन वहां.
प्रीमियम प्लस बाय सेंचुरी प्रोवुड.
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी एवरीडे.
अरे टेंशन किस बात?
This week on Get Me Right, is America's Iran war a crusade? That's what comes out of the Christian imagery being used by the Trump administration, particularly its Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. This, even as the chief priest of the Christendom, Pope Leo XIV, has called for an immediate ceasefire and launched a sustained campaign for the end of war. Then, from West Asia's theatre of war, we travel to Kathmandu, where an engineer turned rapper turned politician has taken over as the youngest Prime Minister of Nepal. What it means for the Himalayan kingdom and what it means for India. This weekend, Saturday and Sunday, only on Republic TV.
From the Republic Media Network headquarters, it's time for Arnab Goswami on The Debate. Arnab Goswami on The Debate.
Hi there, welcome back. Niranjan and I picking up from where Shawan left. You know, we have been wondering through the day whether Trump has lost the war or he has lost the plot, Niranjan, or perhaps he has just lost interest. Twice in the last 48 hours.
Yes.
Or perhaps 72 hours. President Trump has tried, Niranjan, to sort of shift the onus slightly on Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War.
Yes.
Also, this leak that came out in the evening, Niranjan, which you broke off, which had a suggestion rather, that it's not America's war, it's Israel's war, and Israel miscalculated. With J.D. Vance asking Netanyahu, did you have proper intelligence about what's happening on the ground in Tehran? Where's the revolution? Where is the revolt? Is it like that elusive WMD of the Iraq war that we have been looking for a revolt which has not happened? So essentially, what we're going to discuss tonight, Niranjan, is, are we looking at a war which is heading nowhere and Trump has lost interest?
Abhishek, you know, if it's one report, it may be a coincidence. 2, 3, but in the last 2 days, Abhishek, there have been at least 10 reports and we've collated it. Infighting within America, within the Trump administration, infighting within Israel. Even the Israeli opposition and the Israeli chief of staff, appointed, by the way, by Netanyahu, saying that it's a very pathetic situation on the war front because even Israel says they are fighting a war on multiple fronts and that they have a depleting force. It's not looking good for Israel. It's not looking good for Donald Trump.
Not at all.
Interceptors running out. Tomahawks running out. And I think we have a fantastic panel and analysts joining us. First up, here are the news developments of today and the big debate at 9 p.m.
Deep manpower setbacks. Prolonged multi-front war. Over 5,000 Israeli soldiers have been wounded and at least 19 killed since the war in West Asia began. And now, a stark warning from Israel's top military commander.
אני רוצה לומר שאנחנו חסרים בצה"ל כ-15,000 חיילים, מתוכם בין 7,000 ל-8,000 לוחמים. אנחנו נדרשים למנעד משימות. מנעד המשימות יתרחב, שטח הפנים של המשימות יתרחב, הוא לא כמו שהוא היה בעבר. שטח הפנים ביהודה ושומרון יתרחב. החזית בלבנון, מרחב ההגנה הקדמי שאנחנו מייצרים, נדרש לעוד כוחות צה"ל, גם בעתיד, לאורך זמן.
The Israeli Defense Forces are running out of soldiers on ground, of ammunition and of drones in the sky. With mounting reliance on reserve capacities, the general raised 10 flags, from conscription law to extending mandatory service. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister says the bombing will not stop.
ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו ואני הבהרנו את משטר הטרור האיראני להפסיק את ירי הטילים לעבר האוכלוסייה האזרחית בישראל. למרות האזהרות, הירי נמשך, ולכן תקיפות צה"ל באיראן יעלו מדרגה והתרחבו למטרות ותחומים נוספים שמסייעים למשטר בבניית והפעלת אמצעי הלחימה נגד אזרחי ישראל. הם ישלמו מחירים כבדים, הולכים וגוברים על פשע המלחמה הזה.
Israeli leader of opposition, Yair Lapid, has called this a security disaster. This development has come amid reports suggesting that even the United States is close to exhausting its stockpile of Tomahawk missiles. As if this was not enough, US Vice President J.D. Vance reportedly had a tough call with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, asking, "Where's the revolt in Iran?" As this fatigue and fracture builds on between Israel and the US, Iran says the end is just the beginning.
Iran has never sought war. Iranians are a peaceful, noble nation inheriting one of the richest civilizations on earth. Yet, they have demonstrated absolute resolve and determination to defend themselves against the brutal aggressors who know no boundary in perpetrating all sorts of crimes. A defense that shall persist as long as needed.
IRGC claims only a fraction of their military capacity has been used so far. The question is, with all these developments, is the Iran war out of control of President Trump?
All right, our first guest on the show this evening, Colonel Douglas Macgregor. He's a geopolitical risk advisor. He's a former senior advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and he's joining us live from Washington, D.C. He's turned out to be, Abhishek, one of the biggest military analysts and critics, if I can call him that, of the Trump-Iran war. Colonel Macgregor, thank you for joining us once again here on Republic TV. My first question is to you. We've heard of a breaking news update this evening of J.D. Vance having a very heated conversation with Netanyahu, saying that Israel miscalculated the regime change assessment, perhaps trying to duck the blame to Tel Aviv. Is that how it's going down now?
I think we can say that the United States, and that is President Trump, has lost a strategic initiative. If you look at this current extension to a 2-week pause, which is effectively what it will be, that is about as genuine as printing Indian currency in Pakistan. This has nothing to do with peace. It has nothing to do with peace talks. This is all about replenishing our stocks of ammunition, the exotic missiles and rockets and so forth that we expended early on in this campaign. We think that we spent somewhere between $12 and $16 billion in one of the most intense air campaigns in American history in the first 3 or 4 days of the fight with Iran. So I think it's fair to say we're in a lot of trouble. There are certainly recriminations going back and forth. There is no doubt that President Trump has to assume responsibility for the fact that he listened first and foremost to the Israelis and certainly did not pay much attention to people here in the United States that warned him not to do what he's done.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that there were some people who wanted to not have this war and advised as such to the president, and he did not listen to them? Because we have not heard something like that, coming out of American reports.
Yes, I think so. Obviously, I've known him for a long time. And, I advised him when I last spoke with him not to do a lot of things, to end the war in Ukraine quickly. While I was working for him in 2020, I said, Iran is a potential strategic partner. We should not look upon them as the enemy and so forth. All of that fell on deaf ears. Remember, he surrounded himself with these New York City billionaires who are all very loyal to the Israeli agenda. And he took a lot of money from these people in order to be elected as president of the United States. So I think when he was elected, he knew that at some point he was going to have to deliver on the promises he made. So I don't think he was really fully apprised of what was going on. Iran, a nation of 93 million, half the size of India, is not going to surrender to anybody. There's no reason why they should. They can absorb a lot of punishment, and they have. And they've demonstrated a new way of war, the 21st century way of war, which is linking space-based intelligence and reconnaissance to numerous strike weapons all over the country, enabling them in the space of a few minutes to concentrate enormous firepower wherever they want to put it. That's why any talk right now about invading Iran is absurd. Any talk about seizing islands in the Persian Gulf is an invitation to disaster.
Yeah.
No one has to sit on those islands to defend them. They can attack them from numerous locations inside Iran.
You know, okay, go ahead. Because he was on the point of the missiles, Abhishek. There's a report and different reports coming out. I have one specific report, and because he's a war veteran and he knows a thing or two about these missiles, I have a report here with me, Colonel, and I'm going to read out a few details from this report. It's a UK a research think tank called RUSI, which has put out the report specifically on Israel. The Arrow 2 munitions depletion date projected 27th of March, which is today, which means they will have no more Arrow 2, Arrow 3 missiles. Defensive, the THAAD's projected depletion date 3rd of April 2026 as per the UK think tank. Offensive, the Blue Sparrow air-launched ballistic missile projected depletion date 5th of April 2026. David Sling Stunner projected depletion date 6th of April. Rampage supersonic missile projected depletion date 9th of April. And it goes on and on. What it tells you, and it corresponds, Abhishek and Colonel, with the pictures that are coming out of Tel Aviv. We don't see pictures of the Iron Dome or the interceptions happening anymore. There seems to be a real problem that Israel is facing.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the report. I read it. If anything, they're being generous in that report to all of us. Israel's position is extremely delicate right now. They have virtually no air and missile defense whatsoever. 8 out of every 10 missiles and virtually most so-called drones are penetrating without opposition. So Israel is really in very bad shape. Now, as far as we're concerned, we need to keep in mind that all of the very expensive radars that we had installed across the region have been destroyed, which means we have great difficulty picking up on a lot of these missiles that are shot at us until, frankly, they're almost on top of us. And then finally, remember that we're 7,000 miles away from the United States. So when you're replenishing your stocks, which is what is happening right now in the theater, the replenishment has to come from the United States, thousands of miles. Then it has to be loaded. It has to be loaded onto aircraft, loaded onto ships. All of this takes time, and that's what this pause is all about. And I think then there will be an attempt to launch what they hope will be a war-winning offensive. And I don't think it's going to turn out that way at all. I think this is something for which the Iranians have prepared for over 20 years.
And the Americans did not?
No, of course not. You know, our manufacturing base has shrunken dramatically. We don't have the capacity that we did 40 or 50 years ago to surge production. We're not in the same position as Russia and China right now militarily at all. I think we just grossly miscalculated. We assumed things that were untrue. We assumed that we could bully Iran. We assumed that Iran could be isolated. And I think we completely missed the boat on the economic catastrophe that we're creating globally. You're feeling the impact of this in India. You know that your citizens are lining up in order to fill their gas tanks, and that's no pleasure. You have a similar situation in Japan. This is happening in Europe. Now, the Russians, of course, are making more than $250 million a day more than they previously did. But the Russians and the Chinese both want an end to this because they see supply chains being destroyed. And if we press ahead with this next war-winning offensive, I think that will finish off all the oil infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. Because the Iranians have said very clearly, if you attack our infrastructure, our oil infrastructure, our desalinization plants, we will wipe out everything in the Gulf. This has got to stop. And President Trump has to recognize that whatever advice he got was bad, and he ought to fire everybody working for him right now in the White House.
Maybe there's some realization that's why this attempt to shift the onus on Israel or on Pete Hegseth. But Colonel, one interesting observation you made in your last stance, which was that the Iranian warfare this time has pivoted a lot on space-based intelligence. Now, so far as I know, they do not have satellites. Who's providing them this space-based intelligence?
The Chinese and the Russians. And as a result, anything that moves within 1,000 miles of Iran is immediately identified and picked up. And that information is linked near simultaneously to all of the strike systems on the ground inside Iran. Russia and China have no interest in seeing Iran destroyed by us. They don't have any interest in seeing the society disintegrate. No one in the region wants Iran to become a basket case that the Israelis and Americans can run in, take over the oil fields in their wildest imagination, and essentially divide Iran into smaller bits and pieces, driving millions of people as refugees into Syria, Turkey, Arabia, and ultimately Europe. None of this is desirable. So again, everybody miscalculated because I think Trump listened far, far too much to the Israelis. And the Israelis promised a short, decisive war.
Yeah.
Now they're paying the ultimate price.
You mentioned the Israelis. Look at the situation in Israel, Abhishek. And Colonel, I'm sure you've gone through these reports of the Israeli Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir. He's warned that the IDF could collapse in on itself due to the shortage of soldiers. They're
fatigue
fighting
that's building.
Fatigue. And the multi-war...
Maybe not as many casualties, but the sheer fatigue of having been in a war. Remember, not for the last 1 month, for the last 2 years, 3 years.
Well, of course, keep something in mind. We don't know the true numbers of casualties for ourselves as well as for the Israelis. No one in Washington or Tel Aviv or Jerusalem is interested in telling anybody the truth right now. And this is not new. We've always slow-rolled casualties in all our wars. But right now, I suspect that we have all sustained far more casualties than we're admitting. As far as the Israelis are concerned, they've depended very heavily on air power for their military strength. They've always had a small army, a small regular force augmented by hundreds of thousands of reservists. This can't work over time. They're running out of steam, not just people, but they're exhausted. They have had lots of losses. But I think the Israelis bet heavily that we would be their infantry, as well as their artillery and their air power. That hasn't worked out well.
Yeah. And domestically, both Trump and Netanyahu are now facing this unique situation where there is massive opposition. Republicans themselves questioning Donald Trump. Saw a few of those comments come in. People are unhappy. In Israel, the opposition is questioning Netanyahu. By the way, where is Netanyahu? Nobody knows. I saw a report today, Abhishek, Colonel, that mentioned that maybe his flight was spotted in Berlin. He's been in Berlin for the last 2 weeks. I don't know where he is, but it appears extremely shady at the moment.
Yeah, you're right. I have no idea where he is. I would be careful, though, of the American situation. Go back to President Trump's State of the Union address, and when he talked about stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon and taking whatever action was required, he got a standing ovation from virtually everybody in Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, because they've all effectively been bought by the Israel lobby. And the billionaires that back the Israel lobby have bought up these candidates. And as a result, I have almost no sympathy whatsoever for Congress. They're as culpable in all of this nonsense as is the president. But the president, if he wants to get out of this mess, should not continue to do what doesn't work. Remember the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again in the expectation that you're going to get a different result. This next war-winning assault is not going to win the war. What he ought to do at this point is fire the people around him, step forward and say, look, I was wrong. This was a mistake. I'm disengaging. If he were willing to do that, then large numbers of people in the world, I think, leaders would come and assist him to mediate an end to this tragedy. That's one of the reasons that I mentioned Prime Minister Modi previously. But there are others that could come in as well, people that all sides could trust. That's what we desperately need. We don't need an extension of this war.
Yes. Couple of last questions, last two, and I'll take one, Abhishek, and you can take one on Karg Island. I wanted to ask Colonel McGregor on, and you can take that, and I'll take the one on Pakistan, because you've spoken about Pakistan. You know, this joke of a country called Pakistan wants to mediate on the war. What's happening on that front? What are you hearing? Are they really mediating? Is there a mediation at all?
Know, I have my doubts. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I don't think President Trump would turn away anybody who offered help. But whether or not that means anything, I mean, he says we're holding talks. What I've seen in the past is that the CIA and Mossad will pick people out of a government, people at levels below the senior leadership, and start conversing with them in the hopes that they can be co-opted or bribed And ultimately, that'll help us win whatever we want to win. That's not going to work with Iran. The Mossad was already in there and bought people up. It
they're
didn't
acting
work.
as a courier.
When he says he's talking to someone in Iran, who is he talking to?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole
Ghalibaf.
point. None of us really knows. And that's why I think the intelligence agencies are talking to generals or colonels or somebody somewhere in the hopes that this is going to be a breakthrough. I think it's just nonsense. I think you can't believe much of what's coming out of Washington right now. Everyone is desperate, even though we project this air of confidence. The truth is, behind the scenes, the president is quite desperate. He recognizes at this stage that he was lied to, and he made some bad calls. Well, the only way to get out of it is to admit that and disengage and ask for help from others. That's the only way. But at the moment, the plan is to do what I said before, be insane, double down on what has failed in the past and hope that it works. It's not going to happen. I don't care how many little islands they try to seize in the Persian Gulf. You put people on an island that's perhaps 14 or 15 square kilometers and a few intermediate range ballistic missiles or tactical ballistic missiles and drones, and everybody on the island is dead. This is not 1944. This is not 1984. This is 2026. Warfare is different. It's changed.
Well, it is 1984 in the sense that war is peace. But Colonel McGregor, my question is, if the weaponry is depleted, as you suggest, if the leadership is so clueless as to where to take this next, how then are you saying that the United States is going to double down? There are no weapons, there is no direction. How do you double down? You can't.
Well, that's why you have a break right now. This is why you've got this phony pause. It's not for peace talks. It's to replenish the stocks. So I think they're bringing in whatever we still have in the United States sitting on the shelves and bringing it out to the theater. That's what's happening to the Navy and the Air Force. And at the same time, whenever air campaigns fail historically, we then turn to the use of ground forces. That's what happened to us in Vietnam with Rolling Thunder. I went through this during the Kosovo air campaign that lasted 78 days. And by 60 days into the campaign, it was obvious it wasn't working. And there were tremendous efforts to try and press President Clinton to commit ground forces. Ultimately, he refused to, and instead we managed to bribe the Russians to pull the plug on Milosevic in Serbia and end the campaign. This is a dumb idea. Anytime you go into any fight and you take the approach that you're going to use air power only because you don't want casualties, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Colonel McGregor, you just gave, half a dozen of the list of 83 attempts or successes that the United States has had on regime change, this time perhaps failing, But I think we are not yet over with the conversation. We'll continue to have that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as we broaden this debate with other panelists on our program.
Yes.
Niranjan.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel.
Well, thank you. Good luck.
Good luck. Thank you very much. Okay. We have Rasa Juknevichin. She's a Lithuanian politician, a member of European Parliament since 2019. She's live with us this evening, along with Dr. Wael Awad, who's a senior journalist and a West Asia strategist. And defending Donald Trump's policy this evening is Richie Greenberg. He's a political commentator and a former Republican mayoral candidate, live from San Francisco. Ryan Amiri, founding leader of the Conservative Party of Iran, in exile, live from Istanbul this evening. And Angie Wong is a Republican strategist, live from Miami. If I can go to Rasa first, she's a member of the European Parliament. And Europeans are extremely upset, angry, being called names. In fact, Abhishek, Donald Trump put out that post saying that NATO has done nothing to help America, cowardly, etc. And you had Marco Rubio also, say that they've been there for NATO and NATO's never been there for them. He spoke of the Ukraine war. Rasa, what's your response to the Americans as this war seems to sort of get out of Trump's hands?
I cannot comment that it's out of Trump's hands or not out of Trump's hands because, I can't tell what's on the president's mind. We are watching what's going on, and the war in Europe don't forget that we are at war. I mean, Russia's war against Ukraine, and it's very bloody war. And now it's almost everything on our shoulders. We are supporting Ukraine and trying to protect Europe together with Ukrainians from the threats of Putin regime, which is really very, very dangerous for us, especially like me. I am speaking now from Lithuania. We are next to Belarus, we are next to Russia, together with Latvia, Estonia, and we are exposed very much in this war, Russia's war against Ukraine. So now we have another war, which is, by the way, interconnected. I mean the war in Middle East, because Iran is the main proxy of Russia in the war against Ukraine, one of the proxies, and this is axis of evil, as we say, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and also China behind, is big concern for all democracies globally, not only like European Union. So look, myself, I can say that I would like to see success of the United States and Israel and other countries in the Middle East who are threatened now and who are facing Iran as maybe the biggest instability source in the region. So this is what I can say, and of course situation is not easy. I am afraid, I am so much concerned that the authority of the United States could be damaged if it will be not successful war, and it is very, very dangerous because dictatorships are waiting for this the most. Unfortunately, I am not a big supporter of President Trump. Unfortunately, we see what we see in Russia because of this Russian war, because he is supporting some very strange people who are trying to destroy European Union from inside, like Orban and others. Yeah. So a lot of problems in one combination, and the war in the Middle East is also part of it.
It's an interesting nuance you have brought in, Ms. Rasa, that while you are not sure whether this war is being won or lost by the United States, you would rather want that US do something about the Ukraine war, and you are not confident that Trump is on your side in this situation. But Dr. Awad, with whatever developments that have taken place over the last 24 hours and that we are discussing, the kind of fracture we are seeing in Israel, the kind of fatigue, a message of fatigue that's coming out of Israel, the sense of directionlessness that's coming out of the United States, first a 5-day ceasefire, then a 10-day ceasefire, then somehow the war continues, then reports of J.D. Vance asking Netanyahu, what's up with that revolt? What's your sense from there? You would be talking to people in Tehran. What's the sense there in Tehran? Are they getting a sense that they have already won? They have managed this war of attrition well, and that it's only a matter of time before the opponents blink?
Well, to tell you the truth, for the last 4 weeks, we only managed 4 or 5 WhatsApp messages we got from the families there. And what we are getting feedback from there, Abhishek, that they have been sleeping in the bathrooms because the neighboring houses are getting flattened because of the Israelis' attack. Many of the civilians have killed. But the second part which we have received, that many of the Iranian families, especially the women, have donated their gold to the government and told them, we wanted to come out winning this war. We will never surrender to the Americans, to the Israelis. Having said that, I would say that they are resilient. They are refusing to surrender, and they are continuing bombardment. And Iran have the land, have the history, have the power to fire back at the United States. And the United States, lacking the strategic ambiguity, have led to this mess in this region. And that's why we all know that the United States have been dragged into this war. It is unlawful, and the Americans were not at any stage dangerous and in danger to this war. So therefore, I think the Iranian having the upper hand currently, and definitely the United States have to find some sort of a triumph exit maybe he will go for a continuous bombardment on Iran and pull out and he say, I won this war. But at the end of the day, Iranian will dictate in terms what they wanted to end this war on their own terms, because they said to the Israelis and the American, if you started this war, we will end it in our own terms.
Okay, Richie, you think, where is the revolution in Tehran? Is the American public asking the question that apparently Vice President Vance asked of Netanyahu? Is there a sense that the Israelis led the US up the garden path and that there was some error of judgment insofar as intelligence is concerned?
I don't think there is a wrong judgment, because the objective of Israel is to terminate the terminal power in the region, Iran. But they haven't chosen a bigger hamburger than they can digest. For this reason, they are unable to digest the
Dr. Nawaz,
let him
talk. Dr. Nawaz, that question was for Richie.
Richie.
Hi. Okay. So here in America, and obviously I am very attuned to what is going on, both from the left-wing media like CNN and the Washington Post, all the way over to the center-right like Fox News, Newsmax, and elsewhere. And you know, I really need to make this point here that there is no mass protest here in America. We do not have anti-war rallies that you might have seen, you know, decades ago. The prosecution of this of the conflict, of the very measured attacks against the IRGC is popular. It's not 100% backed, and those who don't back it are the left wing and the Democrats. And we see that in our on TV and in the news. We see this in discussions in Congress. Who is it that is supporting this and who is against it? And I need to also just quickly, you know, this whole program in the last 40 minutes or so that we've been live here has been completely negative, has been against Trump, against the United States. And I think it's sending the wrong message, because what we're seeing, what I feel, and what other analysts are saying is a very different message, that actually it is Iran, the IRGC, that is desperate, that is losing grip and is about to be defeated.
But we're not getting that sense. Sorry, Richie, to be interjecting, but I mean, you can answer me. Answer the question with this little thought from my side, that, you know, we here in India are closely watching reports and media in the United States, left or right. We are closely watching media and talking to people in Israel, left and right. And there is, of course, some sense of information shadow in Iran, but still we are talking to people there, and all the reports that are emerging, there is no sense that Iran is capitulating. I mean, President Trump has said at least 5 times he wants ceasefire. The Iranians have not said that.
Right. Well, they're not going to, because first of all, you have this ruthless regime that is in power there, and they're controlling all the messaging. They have their police out there that are quashing any dissent whatsoever, and the internet is down. So who knows what it is that's really happening on the ground there? So I dismiss that as well, and that just lends more to the point that I was saying, that I firmly believe that this is being presented incorrectly over the last 40 minutes or so, that the United States is not running out of time, that Trump is not looking to find some way to exit this. The Israelis are, of course, they're working very, very hard there, and they're actually calling up more reserves, not because of Iran per se, but because of what the Hezbollah north of the northern border there in Israel is causing quite a bit of problems, and that's where a lot of their attention is being turned. So I disagree with majority of what's being said.
I'm sure. Even J.D. Vance, was feeling the same when he pulled up Netanyahu, and we had that statement there. You can read it. It's not just being reported by the American media like Axios, but even the Israeli media is reporting on a call between J.D. Vance and Netanyahu, where J.D. Vance reportedly questioned Netanyahu on the assessment of overthrowing the regime. questioned the entire strategy, questioned the Israeli assessment. That, to you, could also be negative. J.D. Vance was being negative. And let me tell you what else was negative. What else, rather, is negative, in your view. Angie, you can take that. Israeli opposition leaders also questioning Netanyahu on the war without a strategy. The Israeli chief of staff appointed by Netanyahu also saying that there is fatigue and there could be disaster if the war continues. Would you also call that negative, Angie?
You know, all my years of covering President Trump and now his administration, I will always tell you there is a message that is put out to the world media and other things are happening behind the scenes. And I think that's why a lot of news media can't really interpret this administration because it is the chaos president. President Trump is the art of the deal president. He works in chaos. So it may look like chaos to us, but if you understand the strategy behind this, it's actually quite brilliant. J.D. Vance putting out a message saying, well, you know, there's fatigue and Israel, what are you doing? It's a great distraction because you know what we're actually doing? If you're watching what President Trump is saying and you can interpret what he's saying, he's looking for uranium on the ground. He is moving ground troops into the region to search for the uranium because then he can finally say mission accomplished. Until the uranium is found, we're not sure that this mission is over. That is the ultimate goal from day one on February 28th. And we haven't finished it yet. Time is on the side of President Trump. He doesn't need to leave anytime soon. There's absolutely no urgency to do so, but he is buying time. We're creating the chaos for him. So if you do understand that we're part of that ecosystem of buying time for U.S. troops to go on the ground, then you understand the game. Otherwise, it looks like he has no plans.
I'm not so sure because the numbers...
Can I take... Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to bring the numbers up with Angie because she had a point. She said he's getting troops on the ground. Of course, they've been there in the last 4 to 5 days. We hear getting ready to perhaps move in. We don't know where. Karg Island, people are talking about it, speculating. But wanted to talk about, a fact that is being largely underreported, Abhishek. First, there was, a restriction on beaming pictures out of Tel Aviv. We were told that there were restrictions, even on journalists, to avoid putting out pictures of huge damages. Initially, there were pictures of interceptions of Iron Dome in action. But the last few days, all the videos that are coming in, even from the Israeli media, indicating damages on the ground and widespread damages. And I think it all adds up to what really is the ground situation. And that is depleting ammunition, right? Largely unreported, right? You could call that chaos, Angie. But we are hearing that Tomahawks...
Can I jump in? Can I respond really quickly on this?
Oh, okay.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I have on my phone the same app that they use in Israel, okay?
Right.
And what it does is it alerts the citizens anytime there's an incoming missile, and it tells them, get to a bomb shelter ASAP. And it's very accurate, and it's a great, unfortunately it has to exist. But there has been a very, very, very marked lull, and there's no missiles coming into Israel. They're not coming into Tel Aviv. Iran is not shooting them in. So that's why you don't see these reports coming out of Tel Aviv or other parts of Israel, as you just said, of any damage. It's not because it's being censored. It's because there's no missiles that are coming in.
Okay, Ryan, can I get Ryan into this? Ryan,
please, yes.
Well, what's with this revolt that was promised once Ayatollah Khamenei is eliminated? I mean, it seems like the elusive WMDs of the Iraq war. I mean, there is no revolt on the ground in Tehran.
Look, first and foremost, I'm very surprised when seeing that the media, including yours, are equating the Islamist regime in Iran that killed just a few weeks ago, on January 8th and January 9th, the Ayatollah dictator, Ali Khamenei, has killed off more than tens of thousands of Iranian protesters, and you pretend as if it never happened.
No, nobody pretended. Nobody pretended. We reported on it, my friend.
Some of your guests pretend. They say, oh, there is war, there are civilians are getting killed. No, they are not civilians are getting killed. They are affiliates and associates of the IRGC that are getting killed.
Sorry,
and no one cares No one cares about Iran. The people, look, let me finish. The people inside Iran celebrated the death of the Ayatollah because for 47 years, they have destroyed our lives. I fled my country. Why? Because as a person who's not a Muslim, I left Islam. I cannot live inside my country. That Iran is called the land of Aryans, not the land of Islamists. We have lost our country to Islamists that conquered and occupied our country, and you pretend, these Ayatollahs have a right to exist. No, the people inside Iran don't want a theocracy. You know why?
But that's the question. That's the question I asked, Ryan. Then where is the revolt? Why are not people coming out and throwing out this regime?
You don't want clerics in charge of India, do you?
No, I do. It's not about me wanting anything for Iran. It's for the Iranians to decide, and the Iranians are not coming out on the streets. Is the question I'm asking. It's proving to me that elusive WMD of Iraq.
Look, let me finish. Whenever they took to the streets, the regime killed them off en masse. Just recently, the regime killed them off in tens of thousands. And you're telling why the Iranian people are not coming to the streets again? Because this regime is a totalitarian regime. And if you read what a totalitarian regime is, it is a regime that the limit of violence is infinite. They kill as much as people to remain in charge.
Dr. Awad, you have already folks there back in Tehran and other parts of Iran. Are you getting a sense that their people are being killed and named by the regime so that they don't not come out on the streets?
I have just fled Iran on February 1st. What are you talking about? You gaslighting.
Yes, the economic harsh of the Iranian. There is no doubt about it. There was a killing in both sides. The Iranian lost even the civilian and the military. More than 3,750 people were killed. But I can assure you, not a single Iranian, except the Pahlavi, he wanted to see the American killing Iranian. No Iranian wanted to see being killed, neither by the government, nor by the American, nor by the Israelis. And now the American and Israeli attacking Iraqi nuclear site in Iran, and the radiation will kill more Iranian. This is what the Iranian expecting from the democracy that they have already tempered during the 1953 Mossadegh, when they removed him from power and they brought the Shah of Iran. Does anybody ask these questions? If there is definitely there is a political crisis in Iran, it is for the Iranians to decide.
Ryan, you got to respond to that.
Let me answer.
People outside Iran have no clue what's going on inside the country. Because
let me answer that. Look, I'm right. Look,
from the people inside. So how do
you are telling an Iranian what he wants?
He's also an Iranian, by the way.
I traveled to Iran more than you traveled.
You are not an Iranian. You're not an Iranian. I'm 30 years old. Iranian youth, they do not want a theocracy. You know why? Because no reasonable.
Ryan,
wants clerics in charge of their country.
Ryan, you're given your age, and that gives also something, which is that perhaps you are not familiar with the Mossadegh era and what happened at that time that Dr. Awad is talking about.
Do you know who was the prime minister before Mossadegh? Name that person. You don't know history of Iran. I know well. That was called Prime Minister
your country before you were born even. You were not even born. You don't understand the system. You lived outside the country. You have nothing linked to Iran. Iranians are very much nationalist. They understand.
Okay, one by one.
Let me finish.
Okay. Dr. Awad, coming to you. Let Ryan finish.
The word of shames that they wanted a foreign intervention in their country. No Iranian wanted that. There is a Persian Empire, and you know it. If you're a Persian blood, speak like a Persian. Speak like an Iranian. Don't speak like an American narrative or a Western who claim your mind.
What are you talking about?
I have family there. I understand Iran more than you.
Can I just take you?
Let Ryan complete. Yeah, Ryan complete.
Look. You constantly talk about Mossadegh, not knowing most of the Americans who talk about Mossadegh are far-left lunatics pushing this propaganda that he was a democratic guy. If he was a democratic guy, once the previous prime minister was called General Razmarov. General Razmarov was a secular modernizer who got assassinated by Islamists. The Islamists who were allied with Mossadegh, Ayatollah Kashani. Remember that name. No one of you knew these names. The only name you know is Mossadegh. You know, we are fed up with this far-left lunatic propaganda against the Shah of Iran.
Because you scratch your hand, you find America written under your arm. Because you are part of the CIA agents who have
Let me finish. Let me finish. Free speech. Free speech. Free speech. Let me finish. Free speech, you fascist piece of shit.
Your father, he must be an
one second.
Piece of shit.
Dr. Awad and Ryan. Dr. Awad and Ryan, for a second. Pull back a second. Pull back. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. One second.
Let me finish. Mossadegh praised the assassination of the previous prime minister of Iran. That is recorded in history in every account. And he was praising the
Can we talk about today and not history? 1 second.
Violence. Right. He was not democratic. He was not democratic. He
okay,
was
Ryan.
Okay, you made a point.
Ryan made a point.
Yeah.
And he said those civilians killed in Iran were linked to the IRGC. By the way, just to set the record straight, so that Ryan also realizes, and those backing Donald Trump, we covered the hijab protests.
Yeah.
We had a reporter in Tehran when the hijab protests took place. We questioned the regime back then.
Yeah.
What you call the regime. Calm down, brother. Brother, hear me out. Calm down. Secondly, when the protest took place a few months back, we reported on that. And we reported how the regime under Khamenei had covered up the truth and shot people dead. Yes, we did cover that as well. But none of that justifies the killing of young children, Ryan.
Yeah,
160 children who were bombed.
Who says that? Why are you gaslighting?
Oh
like
my God!
Just look, look. Why the people?
It was a tomahawk, man.
Ask yourself.
It was a tomahawk.
Not told, not an Iranian. I checked. I doubt your nationalities.
You are decontextualizing what happened during January 8th and January 9th. I'm going to tell that to your audience that don't know. Look, the people on January 8th did not come to the streets out of a vacuum. They came after there was a call to protest by one man, and that man is Reza Shah Pahlavi II.
Okay, so where are all these protesters,
He called on people. Let me finish. He called on the Iranian people to take to the street and rise up against the Ayatollah regime, and they did en masse, as you reported. So that was after a call by this man, Reza Shah Pahlavi, and you didn't cover that. You didn't cover that. You fascist. You didn't cover that.
Okay, no name calling. No name calling. Guys, please just pull back.
You don't care about people.
We can have a decent.
No name calling.
We were having a very decent debate until Ryan.
I think the only point Dr. Awad was making was, Ryan, the only point Dr. Awad was making was that while whatever happens in Iran is for the Iranians to decide, that does not give the Israelis or the Americans the right to intervene and carry out these kind of bombings and strikes and killings.
Iranian people.
Iranian people of Iran can
not have an army.
No, but my question to Richie. We are coming to the end of the debate. Richie. Yes, you know, what if this is actually not about Netanyahu or about, Ayatollah or about Mohammed bin Salman or about Fox and Friends? It's just about that president. It's been 28 days, for God's sake, only on one issue. President Trump perhaps is bored.
Where is
President Trump is bored.
Trump is intact, but Ayatollah is dead. Ayatollah was the commander-in-chief of the regime. Where is he? He's dead. So you're telling me that Trump lost? Trump is intact. He's alive. But the Ayatollah is the one who's dead. What are you talking about?
Then end the war, man.
You're living in a parallel universe. What are you talking about?
God.
My question was to Richie. Richie, is President Trump bored? That's why he's saying, okay, fine, let's have a ceasefire.
Where is Mustafa?
No.
Richie.
Okay, Trump is certainly not bored. That is a left-wing talking point. He actually is doing fairly well, as I said. You know, Iran, as we know from 1979 and onwards, is, an ideologically, it's a ruthless, absolute fascist methods.
Yes.
They are the ones that over these decades has been targeting America, targeting the West, targeting Israel, targeting Jews. And so this was something that has just come to a head. And with the tentacles of the Iranian regime going through Lebanon and Iraq and Syria and Hamas and Venezuela until recently. That is the problem that we are facing now, is how they have, instead of being a concentrated one small area of the world, they have sent out their tentacles, and that is the problem. That's what we're fighting ultimately. That is the control of arms, control of training of insurgent troops, control of oil, control of drugs, and control of money. And that's where this is all from.
When the Iranian revolution came and
just
the
a second.
Iraqi
Dr.
government was pushed
And Iran is showing clear signs, the IRGC is showing clear signs that they are desperate and failing.
Dr. Nawad.
Wake up, you have killed more than 38 million people, your president, one after the others.
1 minute.
Shame to speak about supporting
I
an
have no idea
American
what you're
president.
talking about.
Okay, Dr. Nawad, 1 second.
Absolutely no idea what you think
I
you're
want to say, I want to say something to Richie, and I want to also bring in Rasa. Rasa and Angie have barely spoken. I want to bring them in.
Tempers on both sides is justified in a way because it's a war state.
No, but Abhishek, I find it ridiculous that Richie just said that Iran is the fountainhead of terror, etc. He's shaking hands with Pakistan, for God's sake, man. I mean, you guys are shaking hands with the guys harboring the world's biggest terrorists. Osama bin Laden was found in Abbottabad in Pakistan. What are you talking about? You must be kidding yourself. But I want to get into Rasa. I won't get into that because I don't have enough time. But that's the biggest joke. That's the biggest joke. I want to go across to Rasa and Angie. I'm going to Rasa. Rasa, do you want this war to end? We don't want this war. It's not our war, but we are suffering too. Our LPG supplies are hit. Gas supplies are hit. Our stock markets are down. People are losing money.